Welcome back to Season 7 of the Balanced Voice podcast. If you've been with us from the beginning, we cannot thank you enough for sticking with us through so many seasons. If you're new here, welcome. We are a podcast that was created for the community. We talk about the nation's most pressing public safety issues in a way that is hopefully relatable to you and your family. Around here, we want to cover information that you want to hear. So please, if there's anything you are wanting to learn more about, or a guest you'd love to hear from, please email us at scp@crime-stoppers.org. This season on The Balanced Voice, Rania welcomes back Jennifer Homan as our co-host. Jennifer is a Crime Stoppers of Houston board member and a passionate advocate for breaking the cycle of human trafficking. And together, Rania and Jenn have quite a season lined up for you. Today, we welcome Houston icons, animal welfare angels, and Crime Stoppers friends, Tena Lundquist Faust and Tama Lundquist. Crime Stoppers has been working closely with Tena and Tama since Rania took over the organization, and therefore, they are very near and dear to our hearts. We're excited for you to hear more in today's episode about their all-new documentary, For the Animals, A Stray Dog Epidemic. This is the Balanced Voice podcast.
So we just sat down with Tena and Tama. Incredible women. They've taught me so much about animal cruelty, neglect, abuse, and where we are, where we need to be over the last. I've been working with them for a long time.
Long time, right?
What were your takeaways? We talked about the podcast, but their documentary.
I found it incredibly inspiring that they acknowledge local heroes.
Yeah.
That they keep trying to make the connection between animal and then human cruelty. Mm-hmm. Those that offend animals will also offend humans, right? They have lack of empathy.
Yes.
I think it was interesting in the way, the methods they show that they have to rescue these animals, as well as what a public safety issue it is.
Yes.
Like I didn't ever think, when you don't take public transport, I used to take public transportation, by the way, when I was a kid and my father decided he was going to take my car.
Ooh.
I had to ride the Metro bus.
There's another story there.
There's another story there. But people that have to walk to the bus when there's a pack of dogs, this whole pack
Kids
of
walking home from school.
Kids walking home from school and being bitten. So I didn't stop and take time to look at all of those pieces.
And I love that's what they do so beautifully.
Yeah.
They create a holistic picture. So yes, they have a heart and a calling for animals. And a lot of us feel like, okay, great, that's your calling. Mm-hmm. But they've found a way to make it important to every single group.
Right.
And this is why this issue applies to you and matters. The documentary which they did through Route 1 Productions, a separate entity that they've created, and they'll, documenting truth, they're going to do other stories, which I think is really, really fascinating. I like the fact that it gives us an insight into the animal problem, but also into Tena and Tama.
Yeah.
Because they're actually relatively introverted, quiet, gorgeous and stunning, and they dress beautifully, all of that, but they don't really share their full story often. So I liked the fact that you could actually, they talked about losing their father and how taxing this is and how they're ready to break, that they're at the end of their rope, that they need the community.
Yeah.
I appreciated that,
I
because
did
this is
too.
Exhausting work.
Well, and I think we often, for those of us that are in a fight for something, whether it's humans or animals or into cruelty and crime, it's taxing on you.
It is.
And I think in their documentary, they really became really vulnerable, rather than putting on a front or an image, because they are in society. They really kind of got really vulnerable and said, "This is really hard work and it's painful." And I feel like sometimes I'm failing other things because I'm so passionate about this. I feel the same, and I know you do too.
I feel the same, but I like the fact that they said we're going to be who we are. We're not going to change ourselves for the cause, but they're going to fight till the death for the cause.
Right.
Which was amazing. I really appreciated hearing from Houston hero Susan Boggio.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's one of my favorites.
She's one of my favorites. She's phenomenal.
She is phenomenal.
Well-read, well-spoken. She knows everything about the issue. We're going to invite her on the podcast. But I guess I'm curious. Does it bother you when you see them so beautiful, so perfect, and not changing that for also showing something so sad and so hard and graphic?
No, I think authenticity is just being who you are. whether I think, I think I feel that in my life too. I'm not going to change. I've had people tell me, oh, you shouldn't say bad words. Oh, you shouldn't do this. And I'm like, look, that's just who I am. I grew up in the oil patch, and this is how I talk. And if it's not relevant to you, then you don't have to listen to me. But, there's also this thing that I've just seen recently online and social media, a lot of this whole, white savior mentality. Oh, you're just a white savior. Well, first of all, I can't change the color of my skin. And I can't change, and they can't change, that they're passionate about animals and cruelty to people. And so I think it's good that they're just leaning in on, we're just going to be who we are, and we're going to have people that, try to negate what we say and are negative for any reason. So I liked it.
I think they've done incredible. They've made incredible inroads. They've definitely transformed the way Crime Stoppers addresses animal cruelty, neglect, abuse, and they've really made an impact in city and state, working with people like THLN, Texas Legislative Humane Network. Is that it?
I think so.
TLHN?
Yeah.
Emancipate, and I mean, all of these other groups. So we're so proud of them. We want you to watch the film For the Animals. You can literally Google fortheanimalsmovie.com to catch it. We want to hear what you think. And for me, it raised a lot of interesting and important questions. But we're thankful for it. And we'll have more to talk about when we have Susan Boggio on the podcast.
Yeah, we're not done with this topic.
Not at all.
Cruelty.
Not at all. It's so great to have you guys. I met you before I took over Crime Stoppers, but my first experience in working with you was something I'll never forget, because I was very new and very young. And here you two came in, so beautiful, so perfect, and talking about an animal issue that at the time I thought, okay, we're going to figure out, there's an issue about abuse of animals, but I didn't, like so many, especially 16 years ago, didn't quite grasp the picture.
So when you came, Crime Stoppers wasn't addressing
We were slowly starting to. Okay. We were slowly starting to, and then I took over and really got to visit with them, and they started talking about the issue with like stats and numbers and actual problems and the root of the problem and solutions. And it completely changed the trajectory of our entire organization. And so it's so nice to say 16 years later, we're still working together and you guys are doing so much. So let's just dive in to the film. First of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always fun to be together.
It's always fun to be together. Okay, For the Animals. Guys.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You did such a good job. Talk to us about why you decided to create the documentary.
Well, I mean, it goes back, Rania. We've been working on this a long time. You just said 16 years. And we know that there are great tactics. There are really good rescue groups out there. There's people doing important work. But when you look at all of the resources that are going into animal welfare, the city and the county spend $19 million. The rescue groups that we work with, our community partners spend about $67 million, and the problem is getting worse exponentially every year. So we said, we've got to look at this strategically. This is a business. We need a business model. So part of that was to tell the story. We came from Minnesota, and we're shocked at the number of strays running the streets and the callousness, the kind of the way people are used to seeing stray animals. We never saw that in Minnesota.
It wasn't there. It wasn't like this.
There. No.
But it wasn't there in a lot of cities we've lived in.
Really?
Yeah.
I've lived in Miami, Phoenix, LA, Dallas. I've never seen the problem like I see it here. And so we know those cities have issues with it, but not to the extent that Houston does.
That makes sense, because you see some of the rescue where I've heard before of the people, sending dogs up north because they don't have strays or because they don't have. So we basically send ours up north to help populate them with homes or give them homes, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. We run a small transport program. It's very important because otherwise the dogs are dying in the shelters. They're dying in the streets. And every time we do a transport, it makes room for more animals to come in off the streets.
Yes.
But we wanted to document document this.
Yes.
We said the world needs to know. We felt like it was a 60 minutes story because it's that bad. And finally, through our documentary, the world is starting to see it.
I love the fact that the documentary, and if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. Go to fortheanimalsmovie.com, and you can stream it right there. At least now you can. It starts with that. It's estimated that over 1 million stray animals are roaming the streets of Houston. You open with that number, and then as I watched it, I realized, one, this isn't, you all are the co-founders and co-presidents of Houston Pet Set. That's where you serve. That's where your heart is. But this documentary is not a Houston Pet Set documentary. Let's talk about that. It's separate.
It is separate. It's we created a separate nonprofit called Route 1 Productions. Route 1 is the rural road that we grew up on in northern Minnesota. So it was a shout out to our family, a love of nature that they instilled in us, the idea of giving back. And Route 1 Productions was created to help fund and produce this documentary. We want to, and our tagline is documenting truth.
I love that.
I do too.
Whoever came up with that.
There's other truths that need to be documented. This is all about the animals, but we know there are other truths that need to be documented. So we'll look at that in the future. Route 1 is a nonprofit production company, but right now it's all about the animals because this truth needs to get out, and it is getting out. It's been viewed in 30 cities so far. 30 countries, I'm sorry.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me, as you watched it, I was very interested in sort of the themes that the documentary took. You started, with the problem. You weave through your love for the animals, and I thought the origin for both of you was almost the same, but also slightly different, which was very interesting. Learning about the problem, strategies to solve it, the need to get others engaged, because what's so interesting, as you were saying, as much as you do to solve this, these animals reproduce. And so they're constantly reproducing, which means increases the population again. And when you have a community that's not servicing them, the problem continues. And the need to move the needle, which involves increasing the footprint and the message, which brings us back to why you did the documentary. So I thought it was fascinating. I mean,
so my take was, mine was, I found that you guys had such humility with the way you created the documentary and the things that you said. You acknowledged all the local heroes that don't have a platform, that aren't, Houston famous, and so I thought that was beautiful that you continuing to highlight those and your collaboration with Emancipet. So you're not only lifting up your own organization to help bring awareness to your organization that's doing this work, but with Emancipet, it was amazing that you're lifting up the other organizations. And I think when you just said strategy, there's so many other things like with homelessness, with trafficking, we have to have a business-like strategy. So bringing all those nonprofits and entities and local heroes together, I thought was fabulous. Like if every citizen could take an issue like that or get involved in an issue like that and truly bring a true strategy to it.
And I think it's different because being in the crime space, you say child abuse. Oh my gosh, we can't have child abuse. Okay. Trafficking. Oh my gosh, we can't have trafficking.
Right.
I understand. Aggravated robberies are on the rise. Well, we can't have aggravated. But animals, not everybody, and this is what you taught me 16 years ago, not everybody instinctually says, oh wait, we can't have neglect and abuse of animals. We can't have spay and neuter. And I love the fact that the way you guys talked about it was, yes, about the compassion and love for animals, but also about the fact that as a human city, this can't be the byproduct. But then you brought in the third. It's dangerous. Right. It's dangerous. So you hit every single point that would get somebody otherwise totally not engaged.
Or even a non-animal lover.
That's what I mean.
Some people just are not animal people,
and
right?
We've learned that because we've dealt with so much leadership in the city that doesn't respond to the emotionality, to the moral and ethical obligation of caring for these animals that we domesticated. There's no response or very little response. So we're like, what is important? If you don't care about animals, you have to care about Houston, economic development, places to live, safe streets, children that need to get to school, metro riders who need to get to the bus, elderly who need to get to doctor appointments. These are not bogus examples. These are all examples that we've heard of directly from people saying, I live in Houston. I cannot live my life normally because of packs of dogs on the streets. How can the fourth largest city in the U.S., a first world country, be known for this and not respond to this issue.
So these are like the secondary issues to
or
the humans.
not known for this.
Or not known for this.
So now we're going to be known for it.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. If we can't...
I see what you're saying.
If we can't
I see what you're saying,
if we
Tina.
cannot appeal to quality of life,
Yes.
ethical, emotional, just caring for these animals. If we can't, how about if we appeal to the reputation of Houston? Because it's very important. We host important events here. We've got the World Cup coming. We've got economic development. People are moving to Houston and Texas from all over the country. We have Super Bowls. We can't have this problem. Plus, what about our residents, our constituents, the people supporting this economy? They need to know about this, and we need to do something. We need the leadership to step in.
And the thing is, it's fixable. It's one of the fixable problems. Crime is very complicated.
Yeah.
Homelessness is so complicated.
Mental illness is so complicated.
All of these things are so this isn't that complicated.
No.
And we're problem solvers by nature. Believe it or not, we come from a family of engineers. We're not engineering minds, but
You're engineering solutions here, though.
But you have a willing victim wanting help.
I'm so glad you
the
get
dogs,
it.
like they're willing to, like they're not arguing
Yes.
with you. Like,
I
no,
know,
don't
they're
feed
like-
me or make me go into this place to feel safe. They're like, oh, just give me a little leash and a
they're
little
also-
food and I'll go.
Jennifer, I'm glad you get that. They are willing. They want to be rescued. They were never intended to live and barely survive, most of them dying on the streets.
Yeah.
And they're one of our most vulnerable populations because we did take their senses away. We did domesticate them, and now they're out there. They don't know when a hurricane is coming. They don't know when it's going to get hot or when it's going to get cold. They if they get in trouble, they
vulnerable.
don't go to a payphone. They don't raise their hand and say, call 911. All they do is sit and suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer over and over and over. And we know that there's other suffering going on in these communities, but if we shine the light, like Tina said, we take care of this, we find the solution to this, which isn't that hard. It's getting them off the streets, it's managing them. It's really not that hard. We need the leadership, the resources to do it.
And you won't have recidivism. Think about that. And my cause in trafficking, like I'm going to lose her like 5 or 6 times before I can get her to feel safe and trust me.
These
There's no
dogs are not
recidivism.
gonna be
They'll be like,
leaving-
hey,
yes.
keep me. I'm safe. I trust you. Give me food. I love you.
Thank you to our sponsor FlipLock for making this episode possible. FlipLock is a door lock unlike any other lock that was created as a nationwide, straightforward solution to protect your people, whether that be in universities, dorms, daycares, hospitals, or even government buildings. It can be added to nearly any door to keep you and yours safe. We are proud to have such a strong and like-minded sponsor of the Balanced Voice podcast. Check out FlipLock at fliplock.com. That's FLIPLOK.com.
The one we pulled into the car,
Yeah.
Yes.
Oz.
Walter,
in the movie,
Oz.
We couldn't get him in the
I was
car.
watching
Tina,
you the way
and then
you put the leash on him. I was like,
Yes.
my gosh, this is masterful.
Well, and then we, not according to the rescue.
Why? But you put it around the bowl, and then as soon as he put his head down, I was like, this is amazing.
I know, it was so
Not
cool.
to mention your
It was like
outfit was
lasso. I
great
was like,
too,
wow,
which
this
doesn't
is
matter.
like
I
a
mean,
lasso.
I gotta say, your outfits were amazing. I mean, let's be honest. But it was.
We're not going to change who we are.
I love it. No, I love it.
We always want to represent our organization and our industry well.
And I love
our
that.
cause, and we're serious, and we're appealing to serious people and to serious resources. So we're always going to do our best for the animals. But
I met you ladies.
that dog would not get out of the car after we rescued him. We were rescuing other dogs. We had food, and he's like,
The doors were open
doors
on
were
the
wide
SUV.
open.
He's like, I'm not leaving.
and he's like, no,
I'm not
getting in with
this
you.
is
I'm not-
jackpot.
Yeah, I'm not getting out of this car. I don't know where I'm
Oh, he wasn't
Yeah,
getting
he's
out
like,
of the
I'm
car.
not leaving.
Oh, that one.
We
Yeah.
looked back at the SUV because Tama saw 2 shepherds that we were trying to rescue. God bless them.
And we did get one.
And we got one, but the other one we spent 8 hours chasing and we never got. Heartbreaking. And that dog is in the movie. But Oz, we look back, all the doors to the SUV are open. He's just sitting there.
I'm not moving. I mean, you talk about the solution being simple or easy, attainable, and I want to get back to that, but I want to spend a little bit more time in your quote in a theme of the movie, which Sydney, our executive producer, highlighted for me in bold and underlined, that you said it's a quality of life, it's a public safety issue. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that a little bit more, because we do see a nexus between, for us, animal cruelty, animal neglect, and domestic violence or child abuse. We do see a nexus between animal abuse and then school shooters or violence in communities. So this holistic approach at the problems really important, and the shedding light and using every bell and whistle. And I'll tell you, as I was watching, and I thought, they look so beautiful, and they're going. I love what you said, Tama, because you have to use every bell and whistle. We look the part. We look serious. We are not changing who we are. We are going to show up looking amazing, and I hope you're paying, we're getting your attention and the work we're doing. I think that attracts a certain audience, which I think is an audience that wasn't really looking in this space, and I think that's important. I thought all of it, I don't know if it's strategy or what, but it's so perfectly amazing, because I think the lights need to be turned on the core of these issues, and especially the overlap with crime and public safety.
And you don't even have to look at the overlap, which we do have to look at that, but look at in our city, last year in August, 3 people killed because of stray animals on our streets.
Go into a little bit more of that. So you're saying that they were killed by dogs.
One child was running from a stray dog and ran into a street.
You covered
Another gentleman was riding his bike and was attacked and killed by a pack of dogs. And another person was managing some neighbors' dogs, and they got, 3 people in 1 month. What other city is this happening in the U.S.? And there's not some sort of action, I guess, by leaders to make this stop.
So why aren't the leaders doing what they need to be doing?
I think it's overwhelming.
And I think they don't necessarily know what to do. They keep taking little bites out of the apple, but we keep saying, we have a plan, we have a plan. The resources needed are great. This is going to be inexpensive.
In human resources, financial resources, all of the above.
The human resources are there. We have 300 at least registered animal nonprofits in the city of Houston.
Say that again. 300
registered animal nonprofits in the city of Houston.
That's a lot.
Doing the lion's share of the
work. Without them, this city would be uninhabitable. They are doing the most work and the most important work.
Have y'all brought them together to try to, like we do with the Houston, right? Have y'all tried to bring them together?
We do. We bring them together at least once a year, because we provide grants every year to these grassroots organizations.
Houston Pet
Set does, not Route 1 Productions. Houston Pet Set, our other organization, brings them together at a gifting event, and we commend them, we look them in the eye, we thank them, and we do other things to try to get to them to collaborate, because only through collaboration will this work. But they're so maxed out. We're so maxed out. It's a bandwidth issue.
Yeah.
You ask a rescuer who's running a nonprofit whose budget is $500,000 a year, that works 8 or 10 hours a day, and then they go home and they manage 20 or 30 fosters, dogs going to the vet.
Susan Boggio. I can't even imagine how many dogs she has at her house.
I've never talked to Susan Boggio, by the way, where she's not saying, I just rescued a dog.
Yeah,
I've never, including yesterday.
And multiply her by 10,000.
Yeah.
That's what the private sector is doing here in Houston. And then you can understand how frustrating it is when we go and we talk to the city, can we get more funding for this? Well, the budgets don't allow. And you want to say, the budgets of our rescue groups are actually eating up their vacation money, their Christmas money. They're taking all of their vacation time to go rescue dogs or drive them north because they have to get more animals off the street.
So is the city the only one that should provide the funding, or should it be the state? Do y'all get
all of the above?
Yeah.
I agree. County,
city, county, and state.
Because it's 10 million from the city. Is it 9 or 8 million from the county?
It's 15 million for BARC and 4 million from the county. That may have gone up with the new building, but yes, it's minimal, and it's less. Houston spends less per capita on animal welfare than any other major city in the U.S.
Wow,
by a lot. I mean, where I would have to check the numbers. Austin might be $19. San Antonio might be 15. Dallas might be 12.
How much are we?
Houston was somewhere around 4.
Oh my God.
But what, and we've been working together in this space for a long time. And I know that our focus has been education and working with law enforcement and just even creating a path when people call and say, I see an animal that's tethered inappropriately, or it's hot or abused, or, on the leash tied to a pickup truck, which you're going to see down the highways of Houston. And I mean, it's unbelievable to me. And people don't know what to do. And sometimes we say, we don't even know who we call. And we work together to figure out and create a pathway and a strategy to get law enforcement engaged, and double the DA's office and double the sheriff's office and double, if we could at HPD, the number of bodies working on this on the law enforcement side. But there's still, I sort of rode the emotional wave, and I know I texted you guys watching saying I'm literally sobbing right now. Like, I didn't anticipate that I was going to be this emotional watching you guys talk about this. But of course, you shared a lot of personal stories about losing your dad and about what this,
Yeah, it got us both. I know. We know we share that together, right?
Yeah, we all do.
I know. My, you could see, which was so amazing, your secondary trauma.
Yeah.
Like, your secondary trauma of doing this work was so evident in that documentary. It was gut-wrenching, and I hope I don't know. And then when you said, I get so mad when people aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
I know.
I do too. Like, don't you get to the point where you're just like, people just go to work, take care of kids, come home. And maybe that's all they can handle, or the capacity. But at some point in your life, you have a little bit of capacity to give back to figuring out some of these issues.
Our filmmakers said something really important. They said, if you can't help, don't be a part of the problem. Stop. And that's part of what we want to get out, is what good guardianship of an animal looks like. Ultimately, this is a people problem. The governments didn't create this. They've ignored it. So they've exacerbated the problem by ignoring it. But this is a people issue. We have to get to the hearts and minds of people. And that's why our program with Crime Stoppers is so important. We have to tell the next generation that animals matter. They're afraid of dogs. They think of them as a threat because of what they live in their communities. We've got a long way to go to reverse that thinking, and we have to do it soon.
It's interesting. We've got our stats: 189 animal safety presentations. We've reached 5,081 students in 395 schools. And this year we've done 12 and reaching 341 students. Wow. So we just need
2,062 community partners.
Yeah. And so much of this work is so high level like this. We won't see that affect the streets immediately. But it's the work we can do now to lay the groundwork for the future. And it's so important. You cannot place value on what those stats that you just quoted, and we're so grateful.
My son goes to a boarding school, and so do you know that? And there's such a great use for these beautiful animals, because my son goes to a boarding school. And you know that every month they do dogs and donuts, because they're away from us and their families. And so they bring in dogs and donuts. So they, because they miss their pets and they miss their families. And so it's just a way. So there's so many different things that these beautiful animals can be, used for, that can bring positivity to our
There's so
lives.
much value to them.
Yeah.
Like, we're looking at them now in a way we don't, but a lot of people do, as a nuisance. And they're on the streets. They're dangerous. They're making things messy. They're procreating. There's too many of them. But each one of those is a beating heart. Each one is a little soul. Each one is no different than the animals you have in your house.
Yeah.
There's no difference in them. I pulled my Sonny Corleone. We pulled him off the street.
I love that name, by the way.
One of the best dogs I've ever had. And now he's going into detention centers with youth 19 years and younger who are convicted felons. We're telling his story. We have, their kids exposing themselves to him and asking his forgiveness, saying, I used to be a part of dog fighting. Will you forgive me? I didn't realize the value. He's changing their minds and their hearts. He's making them feel again. Just to go back to your point, the value of these animals is forgotten when there's so many that they become sort of the community nuisance.
Yeah.
To the person listening now that's never thought to help in this area, what would you say? Like, if you could just do this, what would you ask them to do?
Adopt, don't shop, for one thing. There's no other industry where we literally euthanize over 1 million dogs in this country every year. Adoptable dogs. We euthanize them, but then we're breeding 3 more million. It doesn't make any sense. And we're not completely against breeding. There's some very reputable breeders, but there are a lot of breeders who sell to dog stores who are very, very, they're bad. And so we hope that you would think about adopting and not shopping.
Spay and neuter your pets. Be a good guardian of your animal. We cannot have community pets in a city like Houston. You cannot let them run around and be a part of the neighborhood. There's so much for other people that want to contribute to the solution. $10 buys a microchip, and a microchip, it's a dog that is microchipped has a 95% chance of getting back to the owner. Why, when we have so many dogs going through our shelter system, and it's now a city ordinance that we worked on. Every dog in the city has to be microchipped. Microchip your animals, provide the resources. There's so much. You can go to the HoustonPetSet.org website. You can go to Route1Productions.org. All of those places. Anybody can do anything.
I don't think people know that well enough. That
$10.
If you have a dog in the city of Houston or a pet in the city of Houston, they have to be microchipped.
Yeah, mandatory. But
Mandatory.
Nobody knows that.
Nobody knows that.
We also provide the free microchips because we know that in a lot of communities that $10 is the difference between them getting it and not. And we're happy to provide those microchips.
And
Thanks for tuning in to today's Balanced Conversation. You can find real solutions and tangible resources in our show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. To join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast and on Twitter at @BalancedVoice_. Stay up to date on Rania's work by following her at The Rania Report, and we can't wait to see you next week for another Balanced Conversation.